All right. Well, welcome back, everybody, and happy Tuesday. Here we are with another Learning Tech Talks where we are continuing to explore the landscape of learning, technology, all sorts of stuff. Today, we're really focused on, I would say remote engagement. Is that fair, Jordi? We're talking
Yeah.
remote engagement, how to do things remotely well, which is a topic I absolutely love. I really want to get a table that just says you can do anything remotely, change my mind, and just sit in a public space. And that's kind of what we're going to do today, but we're going to have some fun with this. And I'm not going to, Jordi, you're going to have to, so I guess I haven't even introduced you. So I'm joined by Jordi Figols, and let's talk about that because this is going to get to, the product is Remote Boost, but there's a company behind the product, and we're going to talk about some of that stuff. But before we do, just introduction wise, and for those of you who are joining live, feel free to add yours, where you're joining in from. But Jordi, I'm in Waukesha, where I always am, the very familiar background. You're not. The time of day is very different for you, and the accent, I think, might give it away for folks that, they might be able to guess. But where are you right now?
Well, thanks for having me here. And yes, I'm connecting here from near Barcelona in a town called La Garriga, where we have our headquarters. And yeah, so it's the afternoon here.
Okay. It's the afternoon there. And from a weather standpoint, I mean, and I won't try and do the calculation, but are you dealing with the winter season right now? I mean, you'd be in the Northern Hemisphere, so it's winter, but what's winter look like for you?
Yeah, so it's winter. I mean, we don't have like really cold winters, but still there's some cold. And these weeks have been especially cold in the Barcelona area. So yeah, we're living the winter.
All right, like cold enough. Do you get cold enough where you end up with snow or no?
It snows like once every 2 years or something like that for just
once every
some
2
hours.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, if you go sometime to the north, a couple hours to the north, you will find snow in the mountains. But in the city,
well, in the mountains, right? I think
Yeah.
no matter where you are, you'll find it in the mountains. Okay, but it's not, because we got a foot of snow this weekend, so we got dumped on. So yeah, I won't flip the camera.
For us, last week we got like 1 hour of snow. I think that was and I think it's gonna be for the whole year. Yeah.
Okay. All right. And then you won't get it next year. So that's your 1 hour of snow.
Yeah, I think so.
Years. Okay. All right. All right. Well, I envy you in that sense because you don't have to keep a giant snowblower fueled up in your garage for the winter. Okay. All right. Well, like I said, we're going to be talking about engaging with remote employees and what that looks like because you've been on a journey. So why don't you tell me a little bit about that just for those who may not be as familiar? And I think this will also help identify how Remote Boost fits into this. But what is your background and how did you get into this remote space?
Okay, I'll start at the beginning, I guess. I have a technical background. I studied engineering. And with a friend of mine, we started doing some projects for escape rooms. So actually, we started working with some electronics and game design for escape rooms. And
okay, I was actually going to ask at first. I'm like engineering and escape rooms, but you were actually trying to actually design the different escape rooms.
Yeah, so we were designing the games and also doing the electromechanical components. So, for example, I want that when you open this door, this lights up and this falls from the table. So we managed to do all that a little bit like special effects.
Was that a special project? I mean, it's just I think when people hear engineering, there is a ton of engineering, like you said, in like escape room, that type of thing. But that's not where my head would immediately go. So I'm actually just really curious. How did you go engineer? You know what we should build? Escape rooms.
Yeah, so no, we started doing like a small electronics projects, automating things in the house and those type of things. And then by chance, we started doing these escape room projects and became our full focus. And so, yeah, we were doing that for a time. And then we were really fed up with our normal jobs. So we wanted to start funding a company or something like that. And we wanted to use what we have learned about electronics and game design. And also we were like passionate about it, but bring it to another field. So we wanted to bring it to a more like a business field, and we started thinking about it. And then we created our first game, Synergy, which is like a physical game that used to do team building. So actually, it's a pretty strange game where you use these boxes that are full of electronics, and you bring them to a business event, and then teams there, in teams of 4 to 6 people, they get with these boxes and they try to learn how to use it to get the maximum score. So it's
interesting.
Yeah, so it's an electronic game, like a video game, I would say, a mix between a video game and escape room, where you have to like play with your team and coordinate with each other to get the maximum score.
Okay. Interesting. So I mean, what's fascinating, the reason I'm just listening and to some degree I'm fascinated is I love the creativity behind this. Because like I said, I've talked to a lot of technical folks over the years in my career in engineering fields. And I was going to be an electrical engineer, which I would not have probably made it just because I would have gotten frustrated. But listening to how you took the creativity of it and you applied it in what I would call a very creative way, that to say, hey, you know what we should do with our engineering skills? We should actually engineer team building activities, and even just the idea of a bunch of technical stuff to bring people together and put that together. So how did that turn into a company though? Like, obviously it started like, hey, we're working on this thing. And then you went, we should do this bigger than that.
Yes, so actually it started like as a side project that we had. And once we had the game developed, we went and said, oh, how do we sell this? And then we started getting into the events industry, mainly in Spain. We started looking for how event venues work, how team building ecosystem worked in Spain, and so on. And we started offering our game to companies with also with this like learning approach. I mean, our game also takes input from the different moments that the game gets scored, and using algorithms, it gets you a report of how the team did in that game. So it's also a way to have some feedback on how the game worked for those teams and how these teams developed in this particular activity. So that's how we became like a team building company that offered one game in that at that time.
So then let's break this down, because we just so Teaming Labs is the parent company, right? That's the right. Parent company. So let's talk a little bit about this, because if you're joining and you're watching, you're going, wait, so we got Remote Boost, Teaming Labs, you're talking about engineers building games for team build, right? There might be a whole lot. So walk me through, so how did that then, I get the story of how it came together and how the side hustle, which I think I've talked to a lot of entrepreneurs where this is what happened. They started with this side thing that they're like, I think there's actually merit to this. And then it became, well, how now, what do we do with this? So you've got Teaming Labs, and the focus of Teaming Labs. Like if you came up to people and said, I'm the founder of Teaming Labs, what do you tell people Teaming Labs is?
Yeah, so we create games to have team building activities. So we create team building activities that are technological.
Okay, got it. So it's that makes sense. And so you do boutique. Do you design for some companies? They say, here's what we're looking to do. Do you actually design and do custom, and you'll deliver it for the companies?
Yeah, to some extent, yeah, we can create like custom products for different companies working with our different technologies that we have. Yeah.
Okay. So that's initially what started, was you had built some of these, and then you said, hey, we could not only, obviously, since you built it, I'm guessing it was like, we have to be the ones to run this for you. And so then that became the company's, hey, we can actually run these programs that we have for team building. I'm curious, and again, this is just genuine curiosity, what actually led to kind of the passion behind, did you start thinking we would do team building, or did you start doing these games and going, wow, this is actually really valuable for bringing people together? Or was it a mix of both?
It was a mix of both. When we had our our engineering skills, yeah, and we were developing cool things for escape rooms. So we said, okay, we know that's cool. So how can we so how can we bring value with this? So then it's when we started to applying like some game design like things to the project, and also looking into it from a more like organizational and psychological perspective, in terms of trying to make participants involved in the game, and it's actually come out a game that you have to play with more people. You're going to be one person. You need to play with your teammates, and you need to coordinate in lots of things in that particular game. So that's where we like put everything together.
Okay. Well, and the reason I specifically emphasize this is that I think this is an important distinction to make, and I'm making a note here for myself, because I think the intention behind what you did, because I've seen before where, okay, maybe you have a game or you have an activity, and then it's like, hey, this is fun. Okay. And bringing people together and saying we did something and it was fun, that's very different than team building, which is, no, we're bringing you together with an intentional purpose of saying, hey, we're trying to accomplish these objectives so that you can learn from how did you accomplish those objectives and how did you work together and what lessons can you take from that. And it sounds like that was some of the progress that you made on that was, okay, we did these escape room things. These are cool. There's some neat stuff. But how do we actually use this for an intentional, like you said, you started looking at the psychology and all of that, the dynamics of team dynamics, and saying, well, actually, if we're more intentional in our design, we can bring people together, have them go through this exercise, and actually walk away with behavioral lessons that they can then change. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, that's totally right. And that's the big thing in team building. I mean, any team building company will tell you that the thing is, when you're selling team building, you are sometimes clients see you as something fun for your team, that you need to pay your team to do that, and just have them enjoy those things. And then also other clients have this more like training perspective, where they want to get some skills learned from the activity and so on. And it's always a battle between this fun and learning, and you have to be somewhere in between, because without the fun, it's gonna be like a old school style training that will probably be a bit dull. And if you only have fun and you don't put like some learning or insights or some value to the activity, I mean, you won't be adding value to a company. So that's we are always in between those two things, and we are playing there. And you will have some clients that are looking for the fun, some clients that are looking for the learning, and you have to like please them both.
Well, and this is a very familiar, anybody, I guarantee anybody who's watching or listening to this can relate to this, because this is a challenge that in learning and development you're dealing with all the time, where you're like, we know you have to accomplish a certain objective, but at the same time, it can't just be a horrible experience, because if it is, you're not going to participate. So where do you draw that line? But I think, to your point in team building, this is something I think anybody can take back, because this happens with folks. They have an agenda, they have a thing. They're like, we should put a thing in there. We should fill a thing that'll be fun. And I think that can be dangerous when you just go, well, are you just looking to fill a space, or are you looking to improve something with the teams? And I think that's a really intentional focus to say, well, how do we actually do that well? And it sounds like you use your engineering skills to say, actually, we can do both.
Yeah, that's what we try to solve in that case. Yeah.
Okay. So then let's talk about the transition piece, because I think this is a really important. You started the company, if I remember, 4 years ago, right? So we're in 2023. So 2019 is that back?
Yeah, I think it's it's around there. So yeah, we started it, and
you started as a physical, like, hey, we're bringing people together, we're doing this. Even just from what you described, it was a pretty hands-on type of a thing. And then pop, the pandemic hits and nobody's getting together, let alone wanting to be around a table, touching the same stuff, breathing the same air type of a thing. Not that they even could, but even if they could, most people would be like, yeah, no, thanks. I have to imagine that threw a little bit of a wrench in your plans.
Yeah, I mean that that was totally the case. It was actually it was the first month that we starting like the business was coming all together, and we started like having the numbers that we wanted to reach, and everything was started to like.
It's like looking good. You're like, hey, all right, we're on a good trajectory right here.
Yeah, finally we have started something, and it's looking good now, and we are looking into some nice numbers, nice reservations for nice bookings for the next month, and so on. And then COVID struck us, and everywhere in the world, like everyone stopped, especially in Spain, and we went everywhere else. And we went back to square one. So we actually sat down.
Was there a moment? Was there a moment where you went, I don't think this is going to work, or were you from the beginning like, we just need to pivot? Like I'm just because it's always interesting.
We were totally devastated. There was no hope at all.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it was just like at the beginning we said, okay, so now let's wait these months just at home.
Well, because when the pandemic first started, people thought like this will be a few weeks, or maybe
exactly.
a month.
So
like people didn't really think it was going to last very long.
Let's wait for a couple of weeks and see how this what happens, and let's start working on marketing and this type of things that are not so close to the business day to day. But then we were there. We started working on a new game. But as the pandemic got serious and long,
it wasn't a few weeks.
Yeah, exactly. So I think by the second month or by the 1 month and a half or something like that, we sat down and we said, okay, we got to pivot. We got to do something like different. Let's try to think about what we can do and try new things. And we started. Yeah.
No, I was going to say, I love, so that helps me just even with a timeline. Cause I think I still just think back to that, where there was this weird window of time where everybody was kind of in a hurry up and wait mode because we didn't know what was going to happen. And it was like, well, I think this will be over. No, next week it'll be over. No, next week. And then after a certain period of time, you're like, I don't think this is going to be over soon. So after a couple months, but you didn't quit. I mean, you clearly weren't like, forget it. It sounds like you were like, okay, I think we got to figure out how do we make this work in this new way.
Yeah. So we started like thinking about what could we do with our time. I mean, and we started thinking about very different things. We started planning a video game. We started planning an app.
So you truly went back to square one and were like, I don't know, maybe we just kind of
start fresh. I mean, let's hit pause on this project and let's try to start something else. We started planning an app for coach for like business coaches, and we were interviewing a couple of coaches and trying to figure out the specifics. But then something pretty random happened, and we discovered what was called the online escape room. So the first online escape room appeared, and it was something like a web page where you had to do like a small journey and you had to fill in some questions and so on. And we said, okay, this is like getting some fame. Let's do one very quickly with our like knowledge of technical skills. And we developed a very like simple online escape room game, and we put it up for free in the internet. And with 1 month, we got, I think, 20,000 users.
Wow.
Yeah, with the first month. And it was like just a free game for people to enjoy in our webpage, but that people kept coming, and it was all in Spanish and aimed towards the Spanish people. And yeah, it was something we were even thinking on business on this site. It was just, okay, we don't know what to do with our lives. We did this in a couple of days. We uploaded it, and so what happened?
So it was kind of, I think, I don't know if you know the history of the Post-it note, right? But it was an accident. I mean, not an accident, but it's like and I'm not saying it was an accident, but you were fiddling around with some different things, and you went like, let's just put it on our website. And then all of a sudden you're looking at the web stats going like, wait a minute, there's something here.
Yeah, we posted in a couple of places, and it just like blew up.
Boom.
Yeah. So yeah, and then we thought, okay, so we went thinking, okay, so this is cool. once again, we had something that was cool. We needed to know how to like squeeze it out of the value that we can.
Yeah, because there's lots of cool things that can't
Yeah.
necessarily turn into a business. It might be like, hey, like a viral video. Just because you made a viral video doesn't mean you're made for TV.
Yeah.
It's like, you might have made a funny video. Okay.
Exactly. So that was our position there. We started thinking into one type of idea that we started working on, which failed enormously. But at the same time,
I love it.
yeah, but at the same time, we said, okay. So we started to have this like email list of different team building companies, of different event companies in Spain.
Okay.
So we said, okay, let's like try to figure out a product out of this, and let's try to do like an escape room game for more than 10, like for teams of 10 people or something like that.
Okay.
And let's have like 50 people together play it at their homes, and they should be connected in Zoom or any other like type of video call software. And let's try to build some team building activity here. So we started to like build some proto escape room competition thing. And we started to pitch it to different companies and event agencies and all of that. And we did our first escape room competition, which was we developed some kind of new game that was like a little bit more interesting. You had this web platform where you had to like do different things in the game with this with a story, and then you got connected with your team using some Zoom and so on. And we started crafting this product a bit, and we tested it with a couple of clients, and it went really well. And then we saw that there was like a huge potential there. So we started creating this product, which was the online escape room competition. Yeah, so it's a live virtual event where participants gather in a video call, and then they split into teams from 5 to 8 people. And during 1 hour, they are playing with their teammates and competing to solve an escape room game. And all of this now happens in our web platform, where you can see the whole game, and you can see who your teammates are. You can ask for hints. You can talk to each other in the Zoom call. And all of this now is presented by our game masters. That's the people from our company that facilitate the whole thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when you started it, and then I want to get into some of the intention of the design, because I think this is a really important thing to unpack. But so from there, when you first started it from a virtual standpoint, I think it sounds like you were doing it like a lot of people had to, where it was like, well, we know we need to do it virtual, so how are we actually going to pull this off? And it sounds like, while now it's a full package type of a thing where you've worked through some of this stuff. When it first started, you were doing the same thing a lot of people were, where you're like, well, we have Zoom, we've got all these people who are kind of trying to figure, like, what was that like going? I mean, because I'm familiar with escape rooms, and a bunch of people who may not be super familiar with virtual anything, because pandemic, beginning of the pandemic, there were still a lot of people that maybe they'd been on web meetings, but they hadn't really done anything on them other than sit there and maybe share a slide with their camera off. And I have to imagine you needed more engagement than somebody passively sitting, multitasking, doing something else. How did that go? Were there some lessons along the way?
Yeah, so that was like a huge challenge. And the first product the first online escape room competition that we did with our first client was nothing like the ones that we are doing now. I mean, we have created a lot of technology behind it, but also a lot of thinking and designing around any type of user with any type of computer, with any type of computer knowledge, and so on. So now we have like trainings for our game masters. We have like rules that we need to follow. We have like a very the logistics are all very like clear and so on.
Yeah.
So there has been like a lot of improvement on that. Our focus there was, okay, we know this like virtual escape room thing that appeared in some web pages was cool. How can we turn that into an actual team building activity that makes participants interact and makes participants like get along better with each other? So that's where our there was a lot of design was a design process where we had to do like a cool game, but that can be done by anyone, and it's not too difficult, but not too easy, and it's understandable, and it's fast to explain, and the logistics are easy, and so on. So yeah,
Okay.
we've been working with this.
I want to break this down a little bit now and get into more of the weeds, because this is a really important piece. We're honestly, whether you're in L&D, whether you're in other fields, I think what's really important to understand here is some of the intentionality that goes into us. And this is why I'd like to break this down a little bit more, because I mean, I've spent my career trying to change people's minds that this idea that, oh, you can't do some things virtually. I'm like, yes, you can. Unless you're doing a hugging competition where you need to see what the people in your group smell like and feel like, you can do it virtually. It's work, it's intention. You really have to think critically about, but you can do it. And so I am curious, what are some of the things as you went through that design that you learned along the way, or things that you really had to go, all right, this is how we did it before, and that worked in a physical environment, but now we're not dealing with a physical environment, and you actually had to kind of throw out the way you did it, but rethink, how could we do this differently? Because one of the problems I see a lot of times when people go, well, virtual doesn't work, is they took exactly what they did in a physical environment and they try and shove it into a Zoom room, and then it doesn't work, and they're like, see, you can't do it virtually. And it's like, well, it was never designed to work virtually. You actually have to deconstruct it, which I'm guessing as an engineer, that's kind of your thing, is to kind of go, well, let's like tear this thing apart and then put it back together over here.
Yeah, so I would say, yeah, in this particular, in this case, what we can, how to phrase it? So here, for example, in a physical place, it's if you have like one task and you are a bunch of people, it's very easy that you end up collaborating with each other, because if you're in the same space with the same task, it's very easy to collaborate. But in remote spaces, it might not be so obvious. So you have to make it like collaborative by design, not by being in the same room. So for example, in terms of when we create some games or challenges, we need to make it specifically collaborative. So you don't just give them one challenge and they need to find a solution to that, and they can use any ways, and like maybe one person can do everything and so on. You have to actually spread the information or spread the challenge between the different people, and then they will have to work together to solve it. So this is like a huge important part where you cannot expect people to do it, to do things collaboratively by default. You need to do it to create it by design.
What I love about you bringing this up is two things. So first of all, it's launching this quarter. I wrote a book called Relentless Intention. And what you keep using that word, and I think it's a really important piece, is that when you're doing things virtually, you have to be intentional about everything.
Yeah.
Even like you said, if they're in a room, you can make a lot of assumptions that some stuff's just going to happen. Well, it'll just kind of take care of itself. In the virtual world, it's like, it won't just take care of itself. You can't just kind of go, someone on the team do a thing and someone will just do it and everybody will just kind of jump in. It's like, if you do that in a virtual world and go, all right, in groups of 3, go do it, go talk about this. They're just going to like sit there and go like, well, I don't know. Are you going to do it? Like, I don't know. It's almost like people go blank sometimes in that virtual. It's like they've forgotten how to engage and collaborate virtually.
Yeah. So yeah, I think intentionality, it's like one of the biggest things that you need to take into account. Also, we have faced a lot of issues or learnings regarding the technology side of things. So we are used to virtual spaces, but when COVID struck and lots of companies started going remote without the preparation or without the knowledge of some employees, and then they had to do a virtual team building game, they were super lost. So that's where we had to make things easy for everyone and accessible for everyone, so that everyone can like join those games and spend a good time, even if they are not too good at technology, if they are new to a Zoom meetings thing or that. So we had to take a lot into account on that sense and do things as easy as possible for participants, and also have some human interaction and on it. I mean, we as engineers thought, okay, if the process is well thought, things will happen like alone. We don't need to intervene here. We started with this on mind, but then we learned that it's very important that there is a game master there, that's someone that you can talk to. There's someone there live or answering your messages on the chat, or like being able to help you if you need it. And I mean, it's normal that some people need help, so we'll be glad to offer that help.
So there's two parts. There's two parts that you, like I said, I want to deconstruct this so the people listening can think about this, because everything you're hitting on is so critical when you think about doing things remotely, because it's super important. So we talked about the point of the intentionality. If you want people to collaborate, you better be really intentional about how you want it, and you have to design for everyone to do it. Because if you just assume it'll happen, it ain't going to happen. So plan for it. But then the other two things you brought up in this last piece was, one of it was the technology piece, and I have a follow-up question so I'm going to jump to this other piece, and then we'll get to the technology piece. The other one, though, that you brought up that I think is really important is you talked about the need for, or at least sometimes the need for, you call it a game master because you're doing the game master piece, but almost this person that is there that has the ability to create some of this energy and collaboration that may not be there naturally. Right? Is that kind of what you're getting at with the game master? Is somebody who can make it feel really engaging?
I mean, you need someone to facilitate this interaction, and our game master is that the person who does that, and also offer technical assistance or any type of assistance when you are lost in a Zoom call or something like that. I mean, not everybody is very good with technology and so on. And we stopped, at the beginning, we saw that as problems. Okay, we have this problem, like there's 3 people that are not able to get into this video call at this point in the game. And we started not seeing it as problems, but something that will naturally happen, and that we need to like count on it and put some attention into there and make our service better for those people also. So have someone that can assist you, and also like encourage a team to be more talkative and those type of things that also into that mix.
Well, and I think that point of a great facilitator, I mean, over the years, I've seen that either make or break virtual sessions, because again, going back to the assumption that, people will just be collaborative and they'll talk. It's like, don't assume that they will, because maybe you'll get lucky and someone will be that person who's really good and comfortable and do it. But if you assume it, there's a good chance you're going to have a bunch of people that just don't do anything, and it's going to be a horrible experience. So you've got to actually design for that. So then on the technical piece, I like that you bring that up, because I do see this where people go, well, but like, what happens when technical things go wrong? Plan for it. They will go wrong. Don't go if, just be like, just plan on an X number of technical issues. Yes, some you're going to be able to predict, some you're not. So just plan for the unpredictability.
Yeah, exactly. And also in events, we are dealing with live things happening. So even in physical and virtual events, I mean, it happens all the time that there's some problem and we need to like address that problem. Maybe it's a huge problem, and maybe it's our fault, or maybe it's not. So we have to like, okay, things are this way. We need to like take action on this. How can we do that? And I mean, we've been learning a lot about this.
What's interesting though that you bring up, and I love having this conversation, because this does come up a lot, where when people pick at virtual stuff, it's really easy to do and forget that this stuff does happen live too.
Yeah, sure.
But we don't notice it as much. Like you said, in a live, you bring people in a room. Not every group gets it. you're going and explaining this to somebody. There's always that one person that's like, what were we supposed to do again? I don't understand. But I think sometimes we forget that that is happening even in a physical environment. You're still running into these problems, but I think sometimes we just forget, or maybe it's just easier and it's less noticeable because there's all these other variables that have overwhelmed you. You're not really paying attention to that people forget that this same stuff happens in a physical environment. You forgot a game board, or somebody got sick and didn't show up, or I mean, this unpredictability is happening, but you have to plan for it differently in a remote environment.
Yeah, usually because the tech is involved, but yeah, that's that's definitely something that you need to like be counting on. And someone will be disconnected during the game, and someone will rejoin half of the game, and all those type of things that you need to like just think about and see how to solve it.
Yeah, well, because I mean, like you said, even just that example, if you're in a physical room and you and your team don't know how the game works, normally you're like, well, fine, you sit and chat about the game that was on last night, or say it's not as big of a deal. But like in the virtual world, it's magnified because now you're like, well, what are we supposed to do? I feel like I'm alone. I can't see anybody. So I feel like people notice it more. Is that fair?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if there's like a minor technical issue, everyone will be like nervous
The
about
end
it.
of the world. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
this is terrible because one person got disconnected.
Yeah, the cool thing there is that sometimes these batek expectations for virtual team building activities ended up with us having like a better result in terms of like people were expecting this to be not
Horrible.
so fun as a yeah. I mean, sometimes happens that some groups were not expecting a lot of like of this, and then when they have a very cool time and they spend time with each other and they get to know each other and they start talking and the session goes really well, then they also appreciate it a lot more.
That much more. So I want to get to this relational piece because I think that's an important one. But I am curious, just observation wise, as you look back over, you've been doing this now through the whole pandemic. I have to imagine at the beginning of the pandemic, people's technical capabilities has to have changed over the last 3 years. Because I mean, even now, my interactions, there's people I used to talk to that like didn't even know what Zoom was. And now they get it. They know what to do. Everybody's got, a suite of web platforms installed on every device because they're used to doing this. But you can't assume that, people have done it, so they're good. But have you seen an improvement in people's overall comfort and just capability with being virtual?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there has been like a huge improvement, and at least also now the companies that are still working remotely or that are having these hybrid spaces or so on. I mean, everyone is used to all of that. The huge problem was when the pandemic hit. For example, I remember there was this a car mechanic, a car place. A car repair shop.
Yeah, like an auto mechanic.
Yeah, an auto mechanic. They were doing this team building, like this virtual team building with us. And I mean, most of them, they didn't use their computer in their job, and it was very, very, very new to them. So, but now they are working normally. They are not working remote. So I mean, they won't have this problem now. But yeah, I mean, the companies that are still working remotely, they have definitely learned a lot about all types of collaboration. They are adaptable to different platforms. They don't say, okay, we only just use Microsoft Teams. We cannot use Zoom, for example, or those kind of things. We face those issues less now.
Okay. Makes sense. All right. So then what I want to get to next, because I am curious about this, is you talked about the low bar people have for virtual, which, like you said, I think in some ways you can use this to your advantage, because a lot of times when people hear something is virtual, they almost have this expectation, this isn't going to be that great.
Yeah, I mean,
a lot of times they do.
Yeah, it depends a lot on the person and on their own experience, but sure, there's some people that have this expectation.
Well, and to be fair, I mean, I've been doing virtual stuff for decades, and honestly, a lot of it is not well done. And I see why people think that, because it's like, well, yeah, a lot of times you go to a virtual event, you would be better off doing something else and just having it on a screen somewhere else. But it doesn't have to be that way. And so I am curious, because you've now seen this through all these team building things. And I have heard, especially when it comes to team building, things like that, that it just, you can't do it unless you're in the same room. And I vehemently disagree with that, because I'm like, no, you actually can. So I am curious on the relational piece. You obviously have people coming into this for the purpose of getting to know each other, working better together, and actually doing this. And they're doing this virtually. What have you observed with that? And how have you made it work for people? Because I know it can happen. I'm a firm believer it can. But I know there's plenty of skeptics out there that are like, well, when it comes to team building or relationship stuff, it doesn't really work very well. And I'm like, oh, yes, it does. But I'm curious, because you're doing this all the time.
Yeah, so it's a combination of a lot of factors. On the one hand, you have like team size. You cannot collaborate with 20 people at the same time in the same Zoom video call, for example. Yeah, so you cannot actually like collaborate with many people, because the channel is what it is. So you cannot be talking with 20 people at the same time in this. There's some limitations in terms of like technology and channels and so on. But once you know this, and you know, for example, teams from 5 to 8 people work really well, and then you give them a common goal, and you're giving something to play, which is not work, or it's not dull, or it's not looking at some numbers and statistics, and it's actually like fun to do, then people start engaging with the game. And then when everyone has like engaged with the game, now they are trying to find solutions, or trying to like look for answers in the game, and then they start to like talk to each other. Okay, so I think that here we should do this first, and then the other says the other thing, and then this having the same goal and finding different solution gets to more talking. And once this barrier is crossed, then for the next challenges, it's easier in a game. So usually we have these games that last around like 50 minutes, that you are playing with your team for 50 minutes. The first 5 minutes are like everyone being really shy and trying to understand what's happening, and not saying too much, and maybe like saying, okay, I think we should do this. Let's try to do this. But then after time passes, and in the second, and when you have like 10 minutes in the game, you start collaborating with your game better. And then 20 minutes into the game, you forget you are in different spaces. You are like just shouting to each other, trying to find clues and solutions, and so on. So, it's a process. It takes some time and good conditions, but it can definitely be had like in a virtual space.
Okay. Well, and I think there's a couple, boss, I see your comment. I'm going to pull this one up because I think it's a really important piece. But I think one of the things, the two things that you hit on to highlight, I think one is recognizing some limitations in terms of size. If you pull 50 people into a single Zoom room, it's so many people in an environment where it's actually difficult honestly, if you had 50 people in a physical room without any sort of breakdown, you would run into the same problem. People would just be like, I don't even really know what to do with this. I think the reason it works in a physical environment is, well, people are at their individual tables, or they're, sitting in clusters and things like that. So it's not ever actually just 50 people doing things. There's proximity helping them actually kind of segment themselves.
Yeah.
You don't have that in Zoom. If you're in Zoom and there's 50 people just lined up, it's impossible for them to kind of segment and cluster into groups. So I think that intentional breakdown, from what you're saying, it's a really important piece. In that 5 to 8, my experience has been there's a similar kind of dynamic where it's like, if you really want people to work together, you start getting too much bigger than that, and you get too many dominant voices, and some people just fall into the shadows.
That's a very important component, and we in all our activities we try to have these team moments. Maybe not the whole time, but we have these team spaces where you get to communicate only with your team. And yeah, it's one of our limitations in the virtual space. But I mean, there's limitations everywhere. I mean,
Right.
we also have them in the physical space.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think sometimes we forget that it's like there are limitations on the other side too. It's not like we just can do whatever we want. In fact, I think virtual actually opens up things. So you had that piece. And then I think the other piece you brought up that I think is a really important one is helping people get over that initial discomfort hump. You know, that like, ooh, this is kind of awkward, which quite frankly, the same thing happens in a physical space. When you first put people at a table and you're like, work together, they do kind of all look at each other like, you know, who are you? And like, if they don't know each other, it's kind of uncomfortable, and you've got to get them through that, which again, I think to your point goes back to intention of saying, so how do you be really intentional about that and force them to start dialoguing? Because once they do, they'll pick it up. But if you just kind of leave them.
Yeah, this is the game's job. So in our perspective, the game needs to be the main focus for this to happen. If the game is well done and you have get people to be interested in the game, they will start talking to each other as they will be like interested in each other's opinions and so on.
Well, and I think a takeaway from that, which I think would be really good for folks if you're thinking about this and you're doing anything online or virtually, I feel like physical spaces are more forgiving. So if you do a really bad job of this in the beginning, I mean, it's kind of like, well, you're trapped here anyway. Where are you going to go? Like, I may have lost you, but you're still stuck in the room. So I have an opportunity to bring you back. And I think your point of why it's really important for the game or whatever you're doing to be really intentional quickly is if you lose people in the virtual space, it's a lot harder to bring them back than it is in a physical space. So to your point, if your game is grabbing them right away, because if it takes the first half an hour before you do it, they're just like, oh, forget this. This is a waste of my time.
That's a very important point. In the physical space, sometimes, not always, but sometimes with good conditions, a very, very, very simple game can be like a very good team building experience. But in the virtual space, you need something a little bit more intentional, as you said. I mean, something that really gets participants to like be intentional about it.
Okay. I think sometimes that's where people just write off virtual and go, it just doesn't work. It's like, no, it's harder. I mean, that's the reality. It's harder. It takes more intention. It's more of a challenge. And yeah, if you're looking for the easiest way, then sure, you can find an easier way, but it doesn't mean that it can't happen and it doesn't work. And Boss, so I have to pull up Boss's comment because I think it's a funny thing, because a lot of times I saw this with the pandemic. People were talking like this is such a new thing for people to be engaging with each other, you know, virtually. And to your point, gamers have been doing this. I mean, I remember 20 years ago sitting on, what was it called? Anyway, right. I was sitting on like talking to people I'd never met all over the world, and we're sitting playing video games together, and we're like best friends, but we've never actually been in the same room. We were doing this 20 years ago. So
yeah, it happens organically when you have like the same game in mind, you have the same focus, it will definitely happen.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's, you know, to your point of where you're working and focusing on how do we make this a game? It does bring people together around something united where they go, hey, let's collaborate on this. Okay. I don't want to run out of time. So I do want to, one of the things we wanted to at least be able to talk about a little bit was, what does this look like? Because here we've been talking about, okay, so doing this remotely, I think we've covered a lot of really, really important things for people, regardless of what you're doing, if you're looking at playing virtually. But let's talk about what Remote Boost is and what it looks like for folks, because you've now done this and created it in a way that is accessible so that it's easier for people who are trying to do this to not have to do all the hard work that we just talked about, or at least less of the hard work.
Yeah, so to get a little bit of perspective here, at Teaming Labs, we offer like different team building services, both in physical spaces and virtual spaces. And we have different games for virtual events. For example, we have online escape room competitions, which is one of our main products. Also, we have our new game, Common Sense, which is also like very cool contest. Teams have to play and so on. And we used to sell these events as standalone events. Yeah, so a company came to us and say, okay, I have these needs for a team building activity. I wanted to make a virtual, and I have these specifics. And then we provided this activity for them. But then as time went on, we started to see that the focus in some companies, especially the ones that were going fully remote, shifted from doing something for our virtual team that we need to do like something once a year to seeing it as a thing about engagement. Yeah, so okay, we don't want to have. I mean, it's useful to have this once in a year event with everyone and have them spend a good time together and so on. But we also want to do something or do some kind of strategy around the engagement in our employees. Yeah, so our employees are working remotely, and it's a different situation that if they were like having lunch all together every day in the same space. So we think we need to do something about it.
So I like that you bring that up, because I think that'll help tie this, because to your point, I think when people were in the physical proximity to each other, there were a lot of things that we just took for granted. And it was like, oh, we only need to get together once a year because, I mean, you're running into each other all the time. But once everybody was remote, it's like, oh no, we can't wait until next July to do something to have you get together. Otherwise, that's a whole year where people haven't done anything.
Yeah, and if you need to do an offsite every month, the budget for that is crazy. So I mean, different companies came to us with this situation where they wanted to have like some more engagement in their day-to-day. And then we started thinking about some type of service that is not just like a standalone activity, that is some like service that you can maintain in time. At the beginning, we started with activity packs. So for example, we have like a pack of activities that you can do one activity every 2 months. We offered special prices and so on. And it was very interesting to some of our clients, and we started working on that. And then we tried to go a little bit further with that and try to have a tool for this engagement in remote teams. Yeah, so that's where the remote boost idea came to mind, and then we started working on it. So now, for all of you to like understand better, I would say that Remote Boost is a service where we provide an engagement platform for companies to build their engagement strategy around remote workers.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's really where it came. This was the next evolution of what you were doing at Teaming Labs, was saying, yeah, we recognize there's a need to do these things on kind of a one-off basis and things like that. And we will partner with you and we can do all that. But then there was this growing need for companies that were dealing with more remote work as like their norm to say, okay, well, we can't do these big events all the time. So how do we just make this kind of part of our regular engagement strategy? And so you said, well, you know what, we've been doing this. Why don't we design something that is self-selected, really, that you can do for yourselves, right?
Yeah, exactly. And also here we wanted to accommodate the different strategies and that companies have, because every company has their work culture and they have like their remote culture, and they will work in their own way. So we wanted something that could accommodate the different types of clients that we could have. So let me show you a little bit about Remote Boost. I will present my screen and see how it looks. So this service has like 3 different parts. Let me do that. So this service has like 3 main different parts. One of them is the remote platform. Yeah, so it's this virtual platform. Yeah, perfect. So it's this virtual platform where here you can have like the control of your engagement of your teams. So it's like a very straightforward management platform where you have different teams. You can choose here from the different teams. And then, for example, you have the activity catalog, and you can book activities here directly. and this will automatically send them the different teams emails, and they will like be invited to those activities.
So this
And
allows you then to administrate the groups of your teams and say, hey, let's get you all organized so that whenever you need to do some sort of engagement, whether it's at a weekly meeting or a monthly check-in type of a thing, you just plan for it and you don't need to go through all the hassle of trying to figure all this out and coordinate it separately.
Yeah, exactly. That's the main focus of Remote Boost. And here, for example, you can see the bookings for activities when you have them. And so that's for the managing the teams and managing the hosted activities. And then the thing in terms of activities, we created two separate types of activities. One of them was the hosted activities, and the other was the bonfires. Yeah. So with the hosted activities name, we had all the activities that we used to do that were these big events where you have some kind of host or facilitator actually being present in the game and helping participants. Yeah, so here we have our catalog of different experiences that you can book with us. Yeah, and they are meant for like bigger events, maybe not the whole company, but a whole department or something like that. Yeah,
Got it.
And they are thought to be like once every 2 months, once every 3 months, something like that, to be like the big events that you do. And apart from this, we created the smaller ones, which are the bonfires. Yeah, with the bonfires, they are these rooms for smaller teams to gather in their day-to-day. And they in these rooms, they work like a video call software, so like a Google Meet or like a Zoom.
So it's actually got the full video platform built into it. So instead of
let's jump into it. It's here. Yeah. So this is Bonfire. It's a room this room is for up to 10 players. Yeah. So we are working with smaller teams and we are working without a game host. Yeah. So there won't be anyone from our company connecting here. You can just connect here and play with your teammates. And here you will have all the video call features. So you will have like the video and the microphone, and you can see who's talking and so on. You also have a chat and everything. And then here you have the different activities that you can play with your teammates. Yeah, so those are 5 to 10 minute
those are
activities.
Basically on demand type of a things where it's like, hey, we've got our team meeting. Let's just do our team meeting and let's do something together and spend a little bit of time doing something fun around a specific theme to encourage more of that collaboration and team building.
Yeah. That's totally right. So yeah, for example, if your design team is meeting every Tuesday and they have like a 1 hour meeting, maybe you can start off with 10 minutes, a game of Droid, and then you can jump into the normal meeting. Yeah, so you can just jump here, play together. Here we have like 7 different mini games, and every mini game has their own like objective. For example, we have It's a Match, and also here we have Chit Chat Express, that those two are games to get to know each other and discuss topics and maybe make new friends in the office and get to know different people. Then we have games that are more about playing, for example, like Droid or Tibia, which are more classical games. We have, for example, Take My Money, where you need to sell one item to your colleagues. Yeah, so it's like you have to use some like interpersonal skills here, and it's not just like clicking on something. You actually have to like explain yourself to your teammates. And for example, we have the Werewolf and also the Mole, which are these secret identities games that are very popular also. And they are just like a good game to play with friends or colleagues that you already like know and want to like play a bit more.
And so the bonfires then are really designed to solve a twofold purpose, which is, first of all, one, I mean, I don't know about any other leaders who would be listening to this, but I mean, I know for myself, trying to come up with some of this stuff on your own, I mean, you can do it, but like it's a pain. You're like researching like, well, what would we do? And then how would we, and then there's the technical part of like, so how would we actually do this? Which again, can sound really easy until you actually get into like teams and you're like, well, wait a minute, shoot, how do we actually get people the right information and make sure that they have what this is? And you've incorporated the whole video piece so that you don't have to think about that technical component. The game's built, all the logistics of, okay, if this player has it, only that player sees it. Because I mean, I've had that where you're like, oh shoot, we're in Zoom. How do we tell only that person that and you're trying to build breakout rooms I mean, it's a nightmare.
Yeah, that's the main purpose of this platform, to have these games that are already built for you, and you can just go in and play, and it makes it easier for everyone. And you just like jump in this link, like if we're a Zoom, it's just a new platform, and you get there and you enter your name and you start playing.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Well, I told you we were going to get to the top of the hour, and then I was going to be like, because we didn't even get to, because what I wanted to get to that we didn't get to is the transition then. Okay, yeah, but now we've got hybrid, which is a different animal in and of itself, where we got people all over the place, but we don't have time for it because I told you this was going to happen. So, but I think we covered a lot of really important stuff, and I think it's cool that you've actually built something like this to help people with it, because the data, I spend too much time reading research reports, and the data continues coming back. Employees and companies are still struggling with how to keep their workforce engaged and keep relationships strong and things like this. So it's not like the problem has solved itself, and I don't think it's going to, because quite frankly, work has changed. So this was a really, really fun discussion. I'm really glad you made it, Jordi.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah. Well, thanks everybody. Thanks for watching and listening. And wherever you are, I hope you have a great rest of your week, and we will see you next week. Thanks again, Jordi, for joining me.